And there's others sitting on roofs in floodwaters waiting for rescue. Think about them this weekend. I'll see you Monday.
Chris Cuomo here. Thank you for joining me on NewsNation. We're monitoring both people who want to be our president. Former President Trump is in Michigan. I'm making the case to that very important state that he has better plans ahead for them. And down on the border, we have Vice President Harris, who is also supposed to be making her witness and saying why she went there. Very dicey move for her to go to really the nexus of her most troubling issue in this election. So Trump has been talking. Let's listen for 10 seconds. He's been talking about the auto business, the auto industry, and what Michigan needs.
Save them, and you have to have the steel companies. So we'll do the same thing, and you don't worry about it. Here's what you have to do. I only ask you to do one thing, and then you can sleep beautifully all night long, go to a job you love, and get a lot of money at the end of the week. You know what the thing is? Vote for Trump. If you vote for Trump, everything's going to be taken.
There you go.
Everything is going to be taken.
Right. And we have Todd. We've got another question over here.
All right. So there he is in his signature suit and red tie, blue suit, red tie, and his signature spiel. He is not held to the same standard as Harris. Why? The good reason, he served before. People have a different measure of him and what he's about than they have with Harris, who has not served as the chief executive. What's the bad reason? Well, it's that he is a spirit animal for people who are pissed off. He is an agent of animus. He is a disruptor for people who believe we need disruption. And a lot of people who are going to vote for Trump are not like Trump. They don't talk like Trump. They don't believe a lot of the things he says. They don't like a lot of the things he does. But, what do you put in the china shop when you want to break everything? A bull, right? That's what they want. China shop as a metaphor is what? It's the system. It's Washington, D.C. It's the elite. Who's the bull? He is. That's what's happening in this election. If it's a grievance election, this is what those people want. Now, if it's not about enragement, it's about engagement, then those are voters, specifically independent, undecided voters, who want to know who has actual plans that give them a chance, a scintilla of proof that things can get better. That's Harris's lane. Now, if she starts speaking anytime soon down in Arizona on the border, I'll take her. But, I got something for you tonight, okay? I really hope that you're watching what is happening in the rotten apple that is New York City right now. Not just the prosecution of Mayor Adams, but what I fear may be a political persecution going on at the same time. Now, the news is that today the home of Eric Adams' chief advisor was raided and her phones taken by the feds. I know they've been doing a lot of raids. They're very heavy-handed these days. Ingrid Lewis Martin is a long-time political consigliere for Adams. They go back like almost 40 years, okay? No question the feds are coming hot and heavy. But we are a long way from knowing what they got in all these very, very public raids on Adams and many of his top deputies. So, the raids and the indictment seem to be, as preliminary as they are, more than enough for Adams' party to want him out. What we are seeing in New York City is much bigger than one city or one public official or really the response to one prosecution. This mayor, this moment is a metaphor for one of the toxic aspects of our politics, and you need to see it so that you can reject it. Look, Mayor Adams has been indicted. That's bad. Bribery and other charges. Serious. For what? Getting a temporary C of O for the Turkish embassy? Receiving upgrades for hotels and flights and other travel perks? It's kind of meh. I think it can be explained away in large part. The real allegation is taking foreign donations, which is always illegal, doing it through straw or fake domestic donors, which is always illegal. And then the campaign used those straw donors to get $10 million in public matching funds. Now, if prosecutors can prove that Mayor Adams knew and acted on that beyond a reasonable doubt, which means convincing a jury that they are more than 95% sure it happened, Adams has trouble, okay? And that may absolutely be the case. This USA, Williams, he's targeted several lawmakers. The guy's a star. He knows this kind of case. He knows how to make it against big shot lawmakers. He's done it, never lost. And the office has an amazing conviction rate. That's all true. So, Adams, with or without the help of the people around him, may have done this. But I can't tell you that I know that. And I sure as heck would be completely irresponsible if I told you that he should go. Right? So why are his party members acting like he confessed? They have to know that an indictment, while it goes through a grand jury, only needs probable cause, right? That's like reasonable. It's reasonable that this happened. That's less than 50% sure. And there's no defense offered to the grand jury. The prosecutor gets to use basically any evidence they want, even if it wouldn't be allowed in trial. So, now that said, the conversations that they did put in the indictment that they seem to have gotten from texts or emails or something, they're not good for the mayor. No question about it. But we don't know the real proof. We don't know how persuasive it is and how it ties Adams to the allegations and not just the basket of bad apples that prosecutors say he put around him. And Adams says he didn't do it. He pled not guilty. And he insists that these are lies and that here's the big part. He was targeted for exposing the migrant crisis. And I got to tell you, if you take out the matching funds and it's just the temporary C of O and airline upgrades, I would smell what he's cooking a little bit more. So what is the proof that there's more going on than just Adams talking turkey with businessmen in Turkey? What is the theory of his case that he's being targeted, that this isn't about what he did, it's about what he did to Biden when he talked about the migrant crisis and went after the president of the United States, who happens to be in his party? Well, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez jumped on him to resign, oddly, just hours before he was indicted. Now, is that just a coincidence? Or did she know? Is it illegal if she knew? No. It would be illegal if she knew what was going on with the grand jury. It would be unethical if she was told. But man, her timing was good. I don't see how the mayor can continue governing. The flood of resignations and vacancies are threatening government function. Nonstop investigations will make it impossible to recruit and retain a qualified administration. For the good of the city, he should resign. But what if the investigations have been wrong? Is it good for the city to have its mayor forced out without due process? Why didn't she say the same thing about Senator Menendez? The guy has gold bricks in his house. Well, Menendez didn't go with President Biden, did he? Not the way Mayor Adams did. Governor Hochul said she's looking at removing him, which I can't believe she'd be doing if she didn't have at least neutrality on the move from black leadership in New York State. I'm hearing the city council is looking at what they can do to get rid of the mayor. Even Al Sharpton gave a very hazy answer at first, saying he had to see what Adams meant to the elections in November and to Hakeem Jeffries specifically and whether he could be speaker. That was, wow. I was like, wow, really? You're going to be that bald-faced, just playing to advantage instead of backing this guy and asking for due process like you do in every other case? Today, he said something different.
He should not be judged by anything but the trial. He should not be removed. They didn't remove Senator Menendez. They let him perform. But we're clearly not calling on them to be removed. By what standard? We've seen other people indicted. They were not removed. And that would send a signal that maybe this is more political than it is dealing with the merits of the case, which we've not determined one way or another.
Good for him. That's what everyone should be saying, right? I mean, isn't that weird that you have these people in politics either saying nothing or saying he should get out before they even know what the proof is, just on the basis of an indictment? Now, remember, they take an oath, okay? What is it? Article 2, Section 1, Clause 8, or whatever it is. They take an oath, okay? They're going to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States, right? And they're going to take that very seriously. How are they doing that? If they want to push somebody to get out without due process, how is that okay? Why is it okay? Lawfare is not something that just happens to Trump with his myriad misdeeds. Okay? That's not the only time it happens. This is an extension of lawfare, but also cancel culture. Politicians, the media, working to push people out before there has been any litigation of allegations. Yes, my brother went through it. Yes, it was with the same party. But he was never indicted, and I get that this is a more serious situation with Adams by a long stretch, but it doesn't make the politics any cleaner. The Fifth Amendment, the Constitution that they swear to uphold, the Fifth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment, what do they say? You cannot be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process, right? The Sixth Amendment, you have a right to a jury, speedily. Not this year-long investigation, right? Death by 1,000 cuts, then they indict him. He's already half dead. His own party is turning on him. An impartial jury, Sixth Amendment. 14th Amendment, the state cannot deprive those things. Now, you would argue, at a certain point, politicians who are in power in a state saying that Adams has to get out before he's had any due process. I mean, we got to be careful about this. I'm not saying Adams didn't do it. I don't know. Is it more likely than not that he did? Well, based on the indictment, sure. Since when is that enough? Sharpton's the only guy who had it right. Think about that. Who would have ever thought that you had to look at Al Sharpton on the left for somebody who seemed to be proceeding with all due caution? Now, if this is about going after somebody who went bad on Biden, I find that hard to believe because of who's doing it. Okay? Damian Williams has gone after Democrats. He's the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, which is like a jewel in the crown of the U.S. attorney's offices in this country. And he's gone after plenty of Democrats, even though you could say he is a Democrat, maybe. You know, Biden appointed him. He worked for Merrick Garland. He worked for John Paul Stevens, liberal Supreme Court justice. He did a lot of time at the USA's office also. But I don't know. The guy doesn't smack of politics to me. But shouldn't we wait and see? All right. Harris is talking. Dusty, she's saying anything interesting that we should give him? We gave him a little bit of Trump. Not yet? All right, let's give him a little bit of Harris because I gave you a little bit of Trump. So here's a little bit of Harris.
The United States is a sovereign nation. And I believe we have a duty to set rules at our border and to enforce them. And I take that responsibility very seriously. We are also a nation of immigrants. The United States has been enriched by generations of people who have come from every corner of the world to contribute to our country and to become part of the American story. And so we must reform our
Look, this is the problem for her with going down to the border. She's talking like she's never been in office, right? She's been vice president. For whatever reason, they called her the border czar. Supposedly it was to deal with foreign countries, not with our border specifically, but whatever. It sounds like it's the same thing, right? Politically, in terms of media and messaging. And for her to say, we got to have rules, but we got to love it. You've been in there. You screwed up the rules. You canceled the rules that worked as soon as you got in. Biden did that. You didn't do anything until it got really close to the election. He could have done that all along. This is a losing issue, and I don't know how going there makes it any better for them. So let's talk. We're going to talk about that later, but let's talk about what I'm talking about in New York, okay? Somebody who has lived this, who lives and breathes New York politics, was governor of New York State, our first black governor ever, okay? And he pulled out of a re-election bid because of the heat he was getting that never led to anything litigable. No prosecutions or anything, but former Governor David Paterson stepped aside for the better of the party. And he joins me now, and full disclosure, love him, grew up with him, have watched his entire career, and literally I've known him since I was a foot and a half shorter. Gov, it's good to have you. Thank you for being here.
Chris, I really wanted to watch the Mets game tonight, but now I just can't believe how accurate and how strong your monologue was. And I just hope people will listen to it, because I think it's a crying shame. Not only, Chris, do these people call for Mayor Adams' resignation, but one of them called for my resignation in 2010 when I hadn't even been indicted. And I'm not going to tell you who it was, but his initials are John Lou. And he wound up in a whole lot of trouble and was being prosecuted when a staff member of his pled to all of the issues they were accusing him of. And it's the only reason he's still in public office now. And if he doesn't like what I said, he should send me his address and I'll come over there and we'll settle this like men. I do have a little visual problem. That'll make it a fair fight.
I do have to say something. I don't know how embarrassing this is to me. My father, may rest in peace, loved Governor Patterson. We're playing basketball once. Governor Patterson shows up, okay? Visually impaired, right? Comes on the court. My father's like, go check Patterson. I'm like, I'm not going to check Patterson. I don't even know. Guy catches the ball, hits a 15-foot jump shot. So I don't know what's going on with you, Gov, but I just know that wasn't a great moment for me in my own personal history. But let me ask you something. Give my audience insight into what is happening within your party politically in this moment with Adams, AOC coming out, Sharpton being a little bit, not wanting to take a position. This morning he said the right thing, but he didn't at first. What's going on here? Do you think it's about Adams exposing the migrant crisis and pointing the finger at Biden?
Well, Reverend Sharpton is a very good friend of mine, and I am happy that whatever he was doing yesterday, he didn't do today, because it would be very unfair to call for a tribunal of other black leaders, as they did in 2010, and then come up with a policy on whether or not I should stay or leave office, when in fact they had no jurisdiction or no power to make me leave office. All it could do was embarrass me, which it is what it did at the time. So I'm very happy that, time has helped the Reverend have more wisdom. But in terms of what's really going on, it's the LCD, is what they call in math, lowest common denominator. It is people who are greedy, who have no interest other than their own, who every time they see another person in deep trouble, they pour it on and pile on the problem rather than trying to address it. We've got, first of all, some of these people who called for his resignation don't work for the city council. They are not members of his staff. A couple of them are in Congress, and some of them are in the state government, the Assembly and the state Senate. They're not even near him. How would they know whether he could handle the job and continue to defend himself at the same time? When I chose not to run for re-election, I came to the conclusion that I could not handle the job and run for re-election and be raising money and doing all the other things I would have had to have done, but I did not resign. And it's a good thing, because I was cleared of all of the charges and was able to go on with my life. And it was a difficult situation, but I remember the people who love to dance on your grave. The Judases come out, and what are they really trying to do? Well, some of them are trying to run against him, which I think is outrageous. If I want to run against someone and they got in a lot of trouble, I keep my mouth shut until such time as I announce that I'm running or the person was vindicated or convicted. And I think it is an absolute shame. I think that the elected officials in New York should get together and hang their heads in shame for the way they've treated Mayor Adams. And by the way, I find the charges against him very disturbing. I don't know whether he did it or whether he didn't do it. Damian Williams was actually my lawyer at one time, Chris, during the time that I was being investigated. And I think he's a tremendous U.S. attorney. I just think that the viciousness that people have come after the mayor and everything that he's trying to do right now, I think it is nonpareil, meaning I can't think of anything that's been as bad as this in a long time.
Thank you for explaining that to me. My French is not so good, Gov. You're in trouble politically. when the prosecutor has the softest touch on you. He's the one who indicted you. And it does seem to be something that affects the Democratic Party more than it does the Republican Party. They say it gives them high moral ground. We'll see how it turns out with Adams. But Governor Patterson, thank you very much for making your witness here tonight and missing some of the Mets game. I appreciate you. Thank you for doing it.
Chris, I'll see you on the court sometime soon.
No, never again. Never again. Never again. Take care, Gov. I don't know. We're like right in. It's very weird how it happened, too. Anyway, Kamala Harris, this is her second trip to the border as VP. Right now, she's addressing a gathering, and if you were to hear her comments like I played you earlier, it would sound like she never had anything to do with the border at the federal level. But she did. So is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And why? And how does the man who served as border chief for both the left and the right, what's his reasonable take? You'll get it next. All right, Kamala Harris is down at the border trying to blunt what is one of the biggest issues against her. She's now talking about fentanyl. And again, this is something that the administration has not jumped all over, but now she's campaigning on it. How is this going to work for her? Let's listen to what she's saying right now.
To the United States. Our administration demanded that China crack down on the companies that make those chemicals. And it has started to happen. But they need to do more. And as president, I will hold them to their commitment to significantly reduce the flow of precursor chemicals coming from China. And all of this to say, we must tackle this issue from every angle. Because our highest charge must be to protect the lives of our people. It must be to understand the pain and to have the courage to know that solutions are at hand if we focus on fixing a problem instead of running on a problem.
She is right. What she's saying right now is right, the vice president. The problem is she's vice president. And they had years, and they did not come at it from every angle. Though I will tell you this, and you haven't seen it reported, I bet, okay? Did you know that overdoses from fentanyl are down? Did you know that, right? Nobody's saying it, right? I've wanted to say it twice, and I have bumped it both times because I had to, talk trash about somebody else. But it is coming down. Why? Messaging, people knowing and being worried about what's in the pills that they take, the proliferation of Narcan, naloxone, people using it, as scary as that is. But we are not doing everything. Biden has not done everything, not even close. So is this helping or hurting? Let's bring in former U.S. Border Patrol Chief under both Trump and Biden, Rodney Scott, friend of show, former Texas member of Congress, Mayra Flores, and social media influencer and immigration activist, Carlos Espino. It's good to see you, young man. I start with you. Beautiful shirt. Carlos, you are worried that Harris is starting to talk in a way that you believe is part of the problem, not the solution, and matching Trump's toughness. How so?
Yeah, I believe that the narrative has shifted so far to the anti-immigrant range of things. And Kamala Harris, instead of really pushing back on it and painting a different picture and acknowledging that, yes, there are criminals that need to be dealt with, that need to be deported, but overall immigration is good for the United States and the vast majority of those who are already here are good people. I feel like that's just been completely lost in the narrative in exchange for this, what's going on at the border. And like I'm saying, it is important what's going on in the border should be talked about, but we also can't just adopt, Trump's talking points on immigration and completely forget the reality. We have to push a different narrative that is, like I said, that immigrants are good for this country and the vast majority who are already here are good people who are contributing, working, paying taxes, and doing things right.
Flores, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
What she's saying is fairly reasonable. The problem is she's been part of an administration that hasn't done what she is saying. Do you believe her going to the border helps her make up some ground on this issue?
Well, I don't think it helps her because it brings attention to her failures. I mean, she has been the vice president for close to 4 years. She's been the border czar. the Biden-Harris policies are the reason why we're in the position that we're in. And I agree with Carlos. Immigration is good for this country. I immigrated to this country when I was 6 years old. I want more little girls like Myra to be able to come to this amazing country and accomplish the American dream. But we have to focus on legal immigration, improving the legal process, because right now it feels like it's easier to come to this country illegally, but harder to come here to this country legally. So we need to focus on the legal process. If we care about the American people's safety, if we care about the immigrants as well, we have to secure the border and focus on improving the legal process, because it's very outdated, it's broken, and it shouldn't take 10, 20 years to be able to come to this amazing country. And again, I agree with Carlos that, immigration is good for this country, but legal immigration.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he's saying also. But Rodney, now, fentanyl is one of the first topics that you tutored me on. About how just humongous a threat is and how much more we need to do on it. When you hear Harris say, hey, we got to come at this from every direction, you've been saying that for 10 years. What's the reality of how this administration treated it?
So this visit and the administration and Harris's future, let's do what every cop does out there. Don't listen to the words, focus on the evidence. Tons of it. Tons of evidence online. Anybody can look at it on their own. This administration completely destroyed the border. Talking about immigration in a general context does not help this conversation. You have to separate illegal immigration and legal immigration. They continually don't do that because the cartel uses illegal aliens, whether they're criminals before they cross the border or not is irrelevant. The cartel uses them as cover to distract law enforcement so they can bring anything they want into the country, whether it's criminals, terrorists, or fentanyl. And you literally, every time we talk about passing laws or immigration reform, people forget it's built on the foundation of our ability to know and control who and what enters our home. That's border security. And this administration destroyed it. And they still haven't changed anything at all, really. The numbers aren't really down. They're just hiding the illegal aliens by pushing over 100,000 a month through the ports of entry. We got to secure the borders, and I 100% agree with Carlos and Myra. Legal immigration is what border security helps support.
Rodney, the first time around in 2015 with Trump, it was the wall, and my beef with it was way too simple a solution. We're never a wall away from a secure border. There's so many different moving parts. The rule changes would probably matter the most. They just won't give them to you guys because you need Congress for them. The idea of a mass deportation, Rodney, is that even logistically possible?
It is logistically possible. And I'll go back to our conversations we had early on. There's no silver bullet, but the wall actually slows down illegal immigration. It slows down the cartel's ability to do bait and switch, run something to your left and then get something else past you to your right. It makes every agent more effective. They can cover more area. But as long as you release people into the United States after you catch them, the flow will never cease and it will always overwhelm law enforcement. So yes, you have to have policy adjustments. That's one of the reasons I strongly fought against that Senate bill. It didn't even touch child trafficking. It totally ignored it very intentionally, I was told. And we need to fix the whole system. But literally, step one is to make sure we know who and what is entering this country and we control it.
Carlos, last quick thing for you. Do you agree with the idea that politicians on both sides prefer the problem of immigration to the advantage of solving what's wrong with our immigration system?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do agree. I think there's a political benefit to having a broken immigration system, and there's really no upside for politicians, at least majority feel that way, of fixing the actual solution, fixing the actual problem. So yeah, I agree. I could get more into detail. It would take a long time. So for the sake of time, I'll just leave it there and give space for other people. But yes, I do agree with your statement.
Well, Carlos, we're going to keep talking about this for the duration of this election and beyond. I told you when I met you, we're going to have a relationship. You're going to get sick of this huge head on top of my shoulders. Thank you very much for being with us. Carlos Espina, Myra Flores, appreciate you. Rodney Scott, to be continued. I do believe, and I'll be transparent, I think that this issue being broken allows Republicans to say Democrats have no head, and it allows Democrats to say that Republicans have no heart. And that's why it's better to have the problem than any solution for them, not us. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Sean Diddy Combs, behind bars, federal federal, okay? Different than state. Harsh. May be there for a long time. Why? That's what we're all asking, right? I've got new insight for you. What was really happening at these parties? Suge Knight says the parties were real and there's some real ugly stuff that was done to Diddy and that now he was doing to others. I have another guest. One of his own relatives was involved in the dynamic, and he has heard from people who were in the room where it happened. Next.
He gonna lay down and just crawl in the corner and die. He probably going through a lot of right now because he probably going through a lot of withdrawals for the drugs. But the industry got him on drugs.
Now, Suge Knight, why should you believe him? Okay, well, he's certainly part of the world, but these are just his allegations, right? He was claiming that on our show the other night. So what do? Well, we have to go down the road of trying to figure out what we know versus how people feel, okay? The idea that Combs has lived in a haze of drug abuse for decades, that's hard to square for some people with what they've seen of him publicly. One of his own relatives of our next guest, okay, Touré is joining us. And one of his own relatives interned for Diddy. Didn't end well, but he has that insight and insight from many other people that he has contact with that were within Diddy's world. All this reporting and more can be found on Touré's Substack, by the way, and TikTok. It's good to have Touré. Where is he? There he is.
Chris, thanks for having me.
Hey, it's been a minute. It's good to see you, my friend.
Nice to see you.
So where's the middle line for you in assessing Diddy at this stage? What have you learned from your own family member and sources about what people should feel is a reasonable allegation?
What people should feel is a reasonable allegation? I mean, look, Diddy has been dealing with a lot of drug abuse for about 15 years. He's been dealing with a world where he is surrounded by enablers. A lot of people have told me the folks who might say no to him have been pushed out of the circle, out of the entourage, and he's surrounded by enablers and people who won't say no to him and people who won't say, hey, let's rethink that decision. Anybody who isn't supporting his every whim and instinct is out. So he's surrounded by people, just yes, men and women. This includes his attorneys, because when Cassie came to him and said, hey, I'll be silent if you give me $30 million, he didn't believe her. He didn't take her seriously. His entitlement and his lack of respect for her was so much. And he's like, she's not going to challenge me. She's not going to do anything. I'm not afraid of her. And there should have been somebody who could say, hey, this is a very good deal. Do you know what she's going to say? Do you know what impact that's going to have? 30 million is nothing for you. But there's nobody who's going to stand up to him. And he said, I don't care. I'm not afraid of her. And she had the truth on her side. And now as her story comes out and her lawsuit and this videotape it looks horrendous for him, right? And like the number of crimes that he's committed here is so much. Look, Chris, many people have told me that he drugged them or drugged people around him that they saw. He really liked drugging people and thus incapacitating them through giving them drugs. And I'm talking about dosing them. Here, take a shot. They don't know what's in it. Have a joint. They don't know what's in it. It's just really horrific stuff. When people try to compare him to Hugh Hefner, who Hugh Hefner had willing participants, a lot of the women who were his girlfriends were paid. We're talking about Diddy drugging people and having them have multi-day situations on drugs. This is not, they're not able to consent. So there's just horrific stuff going on here.
Now, you had a family member that got close to that circle that gave you a specific window into the kinds of behaviors. What did you learn?
Yeah, I mean, like I was able to get a family member of mine into his internship, into Diddy's internship program, the Bad Boy internship program, because I knew him well enough to call him and say, hey, can you do a favor for my family, right? We were not friends, but we had a professional relationship going over many years. I'd interviewed him many times. I could pick up the phone and call him. And the internship went well for 3 months. Everybody was very excited about it. And then it ended suddenly. And years later, I found out that was because Diddy had said, either come home with me tonight or the internship is over. And, you know, I didn't find that out till years later. But I mean, this is horrific. How do you treat people like that, especially family of media who could easily get on media and talk about this? And at the time, I don't think that anyone would have believed me. But now that you know him doing much worse things, the story sounds totally believable.
Touré has a Substack and he's on TikTok putting out his perspective, which is, you know, almost without compare. I mean, the man has been doing this. He looks like he's, 22, but he's been doing this for a long time. He's got a lot of context and a lot of perspective. It's good to see you. Thank you for helping us understand this. I look forward to talking to you again as they put more meat on the bones of these allegations.
Thanks, Chris. See you later.
Absolutely. 3 minutes, 45 seconds. You know, the job for us here is they put out the allegations, they do the work, and we help understand why this is happening. You can't just accept anything on face value anymore. We've learned that. And that's at home and abroad. Bibi is in town addressing the UN, Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. He called the UN a swamp of anti-Semitism. What is the strategy politically and militarily? What is happening in Beirut is heavy-handed, explosive, literally and figuratively. Is this working for or against Israel? We discuss next. All right, the latest in the war in the Middle East is that Israel has now focused on the north, okay? Lebanon, the home of Hezbollah, specifically using air raids. We have live shots that are actually going on right now. This is earlier today, but there is active warfare happening right now. They've been targeting buildings where they believe Hezbollah is holding munitions that they're going to use. You know, the Hezbollah has been sending and has access to thousands, maybe over 10,000 rockets that could overwhelm the Iron Dome. So they are now taking the fight to the terrorist organization Hezbollah. They were trying to get the leader. His last name is Nasrallah. There's no confirmation that they got him. The question is, what would happen if they did get him? Would it make things better or worse? Netanyahu is in the United States, addressed the United Nations. I've been trying to get him on the show. All we can do is offer. And he made it very clear he has no plans to end his fight against Hezbollah or Hamas. This idea that there's going to be a ceasefire, Biden will make it happen, Trump will make it happen. I don't think it happens anytime soon, no matter who's president. Just after the airstrike today, Bibi spoke at the UN. Here's what he said.
For the Palestinians, this UN House of Darkness is home court. They know that in this swamp of anti-Semitic bile, there's an automatic majority willing to demonize the Jewish state on anything. Until Israel, until the Jewish state is treated like other nations, until this anti-Semitic swamp is drained, the UN will be viewed by fair-minded people everywhere as nothing more than a contemptuous farce.
Now, you have to separate feelings about Bibi Netanyahu, and there's plenty of room for criticism, with his message that does resonate with a lot of Jewish people in Israel and here. Now, I got a great guest for you. I've been wanting to get this guy on for a long time. I've been following him. I'm going to screw up his name when I say it, but I'm going to have him say it so that we know we get it right. Have you seen online the brand I'm That Jew? Have you seen it? Millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of views. I'm That Jew. The guy who started it is Eitan Chitayat. I think I got his last name wrong. I think I got his first name right.
You completely butchered it.
I did butcher it, but I want to give it to me the right way.
Eitan Chitayat from Israel. Shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Eitan Chitayat.
Perfect.
All right, good. I love the brand. I love what you're doing. I love the empowerment. Politics aside, what makes peace in the Middle East aside, there is a need for what you're doing. So it's good. Also, joining us is former U.S. Special Envoy to Israel and Palestine. And I want to bring him in also, Frank Lowenstein. It's good to see you, Frank. Thank you for joining us again. Appreciate you. Important to have you in the conversation. Why did you start I'm That Jew? What have you learned about what the conflict in Israel is doing to Jews around the world?
Thank you, Chris. First of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. You remember Charlie Hebdo? It was a massacre. And at the same time of the massacre,
I was there.
The kosher supermarket was targeted and Jewish shoppers were killed. A friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, her father-in-law and her brother-in-law were at that supermarket, and she lived in France. I called on the day to just check in and say, how are you doing? And she said, I'm terrified. And I said, why? And she said, because I don't tell anyone I'm Jewish. I don't tell anyone that I've ever been to Israel. And so we spoke a little bit, and then afterwards I sat down and I thought to myself, how can it be, Chris, that in 2014, I believe it was, that you can be afraid to say that you're Jewish? So I sat down and I wrote a piece called I'm That Jew, which actually a lot of people think is an expression against anti-Semitism, but it isn't. It was kind of a love letter to my Jewish brothers and sisters and our allies to remind everyone of who we really are. And the reason why I did it was because, look, we're only 16 million people. We're only 16 million people in the world. That's 0.2% of the population. So believe it or not, a lot of people don't know who Jewish people are. And I wanted people to know who we are. But in order for us to get people to know us, we have to own our narrative. And I feel that because we're outnumbered by a lot of haters, if you look at, unfortunately, I mean, the sad fact is that of the 1.6 or 2 billion Muslims there are in the world, a lot of Muslim leadership, which is radical, preaches hatred towards the Jews. And they've got the numbers. So my idea was, you know, we've got to own our narrative. I own my narrative. You don't get to tell me who I am. I'm a Jew. Just like a white person doesn't tell a black person what their narrative is. A straight person doesn't get to tell a gay person what their narrative is. A man doesn't get to tell a woman what their narrative is. And anyone who is not Jewish doesn't get to tell us who we are. So that's why I made it. I turned it into a short 6-minute film. And the reason that it's 6 minutes long is to commemorate 6 million Jews, to commemorate them. And it went viral around, 12 years ago with 15 million views. But since then, I've been working, especially in the last year. I've just stopped doing what I do for a living, and I've doubled down on, branding is my day job, but being Jewish is my life. So I've doubled down on that. I want people to get to know us. And I want Jewish people and our allies to speak up and to not be afraid. I'm that Jew. I'm that forever with my people Jew. I'm that lights up a room Jew. I'm that brand builder Jew. I'm that sugar and spice, naughty but nice Jew. I'm that speaking to Chris Cuomo, who I really admire as a human being Jew. I'm that Jew. And the thing is, everyone who is Jewish can own whatever Jew they want to be. But other people do not get to determine who we are, and we're fighting back. And that's what I'm That Jew is all about.
Well, look, I think it's very compelling. I do think, Frank, that's something that we've learned, that maybe I'm the one, I'll point the finger just at me. I had assumed that Jews in America, unless they were brown-skinned, had graduated into whiteness, the way my people have, the Italian Americans, Irish Americans. We're just white people now, right? I'm a member of the group of privilege in this country. Jews have not graduated to whiteness, not even in America. I think that's become fairly obvious. Now, let's talk about the pushback to the proposition, which is, Frank, hey, you don't want people to come after you. Stop bombing the heck out of Gaza, and now stop bombing the heck out of Beirut, and people won't be so upset with you. How do you handle that proposition, Frank?
Well, first of all, I'd really commend Eitan for his work. I think that's fantastic. I look forward to watching myself. But the one thing I would say about anti-Semitism, Frank, I think the experience of Jews varies. Can't speak to Jews as a monolithic community here in the United States. I think anti-Semitism is more of an issue for some than it is for others. The only question that I would raise is to what extent is Netanyahu delegitimizing any criticism of his government under the guise of anti-Semitism?